first pay-per-view of the year is coming up this weekend, and I decide what goes on this channel, so I don't know why I'm doing this to myself. Look, I like to think that I know quite a bit about MMA, but predictions are not my forte. So, if anything, hopefully this will be a good video to come back to after Saturday, just to have a good laugh. And you guys can let me know in the comments what my worst prediction of the video is. If anything, I think the best prediction I can make is that I'm going 0 for 5 in my predictions today. I think it'll be just out of shot, but I do have my boxing glove to make some extra sounds with during this video. But let's get started. The first fight on the main card on the pay-per-view is Arnold Allen and Evloev at featherweight. And I'll put the tail of the tape up on screen for you to look at. I think the general idea here is that this fight will go the distance. Allen is probably the more powerful one out of the two, but Evloev, I expect, should still be able to outstrike him. And I think actually Evloev will try to avoid Allen's power by taking it to the ground early and often. You know, he might keep it standing at first to get a feel for him, but remember in his Diego Lopez fight, he got clipped early, and then he spent the rest of the fight trying to keep it on the ground. Control time is sort of his MO. And he's got good ground and pound, so I don't blame him. And not only that, but he is chasing a finish. At least you would hope. I think he's 6-0 in the UFC. But every win came by decision, I think. So hopefully, he's got a submission plan going for this one. Now, Allen, on his side, look, he does have a guillotine in his arsenal, but we haven't seen it in quite a few years. And before that loss to Holloway in his last fight, he had 2 knockout wins in 2022 against Hooker and Cater. So I expect him to rely on his power. I think what he had to work on after his fight against Holloway was his accuracy. He throws bombs, but they have to connect, and that was an issue that we saw in that fight. So if he can get one in early, sort of, in a round, it could be a good look. Still, though, I have to go with Evloev by decision for this one. It doesn't mean that it couldn't be a very exciting fight. I think this could be a great way to kick things off for pay-per-views this year. Next, Chris Curtis and Marc-André Barriault at middleweight. And look, Marc-André is, he comes from basically the same town as me, or almost. So of course I'll be pulling for homeboy to win. But is that my prediction? Well, let's look at these guys. So the thing about Curtis is that you can't let him fight his fight. You have to frustrate him a little bit. You have to get him off of his game plan. So Barriault could try to emulate Hermanson in his win against Curtis. But I just don't know if he has the reach or the legs for it. I think we're more likely to see a Rodolfo Vieira approach. Trying to control him against the cage. And he's had success with that recently enough in his fight against Julian Marquez. He got the TKO against the cage. The problem is, I don't see him being able to soften up Curtis enough for that. Maybe if he's lucky, he gets the standing guillotine on Curtis from the cage, but we've never seen Curtis be submitted, I don't think. And a big part of that is Curtis's really, really good takedown defense. And I think that'll help Curtis get off the cage if Barriault tries to bring him there. Barriault is first and foremost a brawler. Now, Chris Curtis, on the other hand, just a scary dude, right? Not only can he take some serious shots, but if the guy catches you with his left hand, you are in trouble. And on top of that, he's a well-rounded kickboxer. He's got knees and kicks to serve up to. So I just have to go with Curtis on this one. I'm gonna call it a second round KO. Early second round. Okay, the third fight we have on the card is Neil Magny versus Mike Malott. Yeah, Malott. At welterweight. And now I get to pick the Canadian. And look, I've always liked Magny, but the sort of headline here is that, he's kind of on the other side of his career now, as much as you hate to say it. The guy is 36, he's got 40 professional fights under his belt. And while Malott is only 4 years younger than Magny, he's in his prime, he's on the rise. And I just just can't separate these two guys when I'm looking at this matchup. And what I mean by that is that I can't set Malott aside and just look at Magny's strengths here, because right now Malott is just better in every respect. He's got 3 fights in the UFC. If you don't count the Contender Series, which if you do count the Contender Series, I think you're just adding a 39-second submission to the slate, so it only helps the argument. But in his 3 fights, we really haven't seen any weaknesses of his. He's quick and aggressive on the feet. He's got great awareness and activity on the ground. And I think, was it his first fight in Florida, where he did get caught a couple times, he did get clipped, but we've only seen his defense improve since then. And if anything, that's his weakness, the risk of getting caught. He doesn't have the longest reach in the division, but he's done a pay-per-view before in Vancouver, so the pressure isn't an issue. And now he's getting a ranked opponent with Magny. So he's very much on the path to a title shot in the next couple of years if he stays active. So it's not to take anything away from Magny, but I feel like where they are in their careers, Malott can outstrike him. He can control him on the ground, and he can take him down if he wants to. Magny hasn't knocked anyone out in 5 years. But maybe to avoid that reach of his, Malott could take him down early. And he trains at Alpha Male, doesn't he? So we could easily expect a guillotine finish here. So I'll say this is a first round submission for Malott. And of course I'm biased, but I think if you haven't been paying attention to this guy, definitely tune in for this fight. I'm really excited about him. I think he could really be the next Canadian champ, which we're way overdue for. So Mike Malott is my guy. Okay, next we have the co-main event. Rocky Pennington versus Bueno Silva at bantamweight for the title. And I have to be honest, after the Irene Aldana fight with Carol Rosa in December, I sort of expect to be disappointed by this coming fight. I think we had maybe the second greatest women's MMA fight ever last month. It's gonna take some work to beat the Whaley and Joanna fight, but the Aldana Rosa fight was up there. And that was while the title was vacant, but it wasn't for the title. So I think there's a lot of pressure going into this fight for these two to give us a really good show. And I should say, but, Pennington hasn't fought in a year. Bueno Silva had her last fight overturned to a no contest, although I think in her case it's forgivable. I think we've all sort of, I don't think anyone was too bothered by it. But this fight just feels very anticlimactic. But I love women's MMA, so I hope to be proven wrong. And so, for this fight, there's no denying that Pennington is very technically sound on her feet. And I think that's sort of been ignored throughout her career, in favor of calling her a brawler. And she does have good takedown defense. But I do think that Bueno Silva will do everything she can do to finish this fight inside the distance with a submission. Otherwise it's a decision win for Pennington. I'm comfortable saying that. But my prediction is a second round submission for Bueno Silva. And that is sort of a wishful thinking situation. Because I don't know that many people are excited about this division right now. And a decision win, anything short of a fight like the one we had last month, may as well not happen. I think that the UFC needs to put some thought and some time into this division. The roster needs to be shaken up a bit. And hell, if 135 was my weight class, I'd be starting a campaign to get in there. Thankfully, I'm more of a flyweight myself, so there's no need. I'm totally kidding. I have to make that clear, but yeah, I think more so than the belt being on the line, there's pressure here to sort of save the division. And I think that Bueno Silva could be a part of that. Very quickly though, I do have to say that I've been watching Rocky since since she was on Tough, which is hard to believe was over 10 years ago now. We're all getting so old. So there's no hate to her. It would be very cool to see her story reach that point. Let's not forget that. So I'd be happy for Rocky to win, but I need women's MMA, and specifically the bantamweight division, to wake up a little bit. And now, the main event of the evening. Yeah, forget about me fighting at flyweight. I want Bruce Buffer's job when he's done. We have the champ, Strickland, versus Plessis for the middleweight title. honestly, this feels like such a weird way to start the year. Because Strickland's title win sort of felt like a fluke, right? He came off of, in 2022, a split decision against Hermanson, and then 2 losses against Barriault and Cannonier. And then in the span of 1 year, he, while everyone was waiting for Dreykus to get to Izzy, he beat Evloev. He knocked out Magomedov. And then he went the distance with Izzy to win the belt. And then Dreykus, obviously a knockout artist, but he's shown us against Darren Till that he also has a ground game, which could come into play here. Because I think Strickland probably has the better stamina of the two. So my first thought was to call this like a first or second round KO for Dreykus. But Strickland could surprise us again. And actually in his last 10 or 11 fights, he's only been knocked out by Barriault. And we all know that Barriault is not a middleweight. So I'm going out on a limb, and I'm gonna predict, I'll say that in the second or third round, Dreykus will get fatigued. He's gonna get a little frustrated, and he'll try to take Strickland down and submit him. So that's my wacky prediction for this card. You always gotta have a wacky prediction. And I'm going to say Plessis by submission in the second round. Yeah. Well, he still has a little gas. But yeah, guys, these are my completely wrong predictions for UFC 297. We're all here to have fun. Let me know in the comments what your wacky prediction is for this card. Let me know where I've gone horribly, horribly wrong. Thank you for hanging out with me today. I'll see you in the next video.